Okay, now we're live. So, why'd you smile like that?
Huh?
Okay, well, welcome to the Sarcastically Optimistic podcast. This is episode technically 5 because I labeled the first episode 0. But just to have a celebratory thing, we have actually someone to interview, which is great. And it just so happened to be out of convenience because I was home anyways. So, just like any great podcaster, of course, you have to invite a parent who is coerced in some sort of way to be here. As you can tell, for the visual listeners out there, how forced the smile is and how long it took to set up the shot with the mugs and everything. So, welcome. I'd like to introduce. Do you want to introduce yourself or you want me to introduce yourself?
You can introduce.
Okay. Well, at the ripe age of how old are you?
67.
67. Marianne O'Meala Requerme from Germany. Where are you? Hawaii. There's a lot of cultural things going on with you. But happy to be here in your humble home with the Last Supper. Very staple of a Filipino household to have a Last Supper, of course. And it's good to be home. It's good to be home, I'd say. So welcome.
Good. Thank you.
So formal. This is very strange, but it's not that strange, I'd say. There is a slight reverb because we are in a very, very echoey part of the house, but I think this is probably the most aesthetically pleasing part of the house, probably. That wasn't a backhanded compliment, by the way. This is a great edge of the house. Is you here or like in the garage? So we chose accordingly. So welcome to the Sarcastically Optimistic podcast, Ma.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, a little less of me holding you against your will tone, but welcome. So I just wanted to invite you because one, it's just convenient. Two, I think you're old enough to have at least a pinch of wisdom for a lot of people that are listening, because the average age of the people that are listening are around your age, I'd say 150, 160, give or take. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing. This is all playful talk. But I'm glad to have you here. She said prior to this that she's very fearful of what I'm going to be asking. If you guys know that she's also wearing headphones to feel included. The headphones are not attached to anything whatsoever, but it's just to fit the podcast environment. But as you know, this podcast is about like being on a journey of life, which is completely nonlinear. And I'd say you, out of all people, have had the most, not rocky, but probably a life that has been projected in many different directions. There's been many trajectories that you say, that life has taken you on, and you just so happen to be happy at the end of the day, right? And
Yes.
like you kind of live with what you have, even in the moment. It's kind of frustrating. So I'm talking a lot about your journey, and I'm kind of spoiling a little bit.
Okay.
So I'm gonna let you go ahead. Why don't you give us like a brief summary of, maybe like
Of
something
my
about your
life?
your life. I know it's a lot of, it's like a whole century to kind of unfold in a few sentences, but
Okay. So any aspect of my life?
maybe like how you were
Turbulent ones, happy ones?
Right. See, this is the first time I'm interviewing someone, so I'm just testing out my social skills at this point. But let's just start with when you were younger, right? Like you didn't grow up in America, just like a lot of the older Filipino generation here, and you grew up in the Philippines, right? But you weren't necessarily like poor, right? Like you were kind of like in the middle class, maybe upper middle class. And like growing up with how many siblings? Like almost 12.
10.
Technically almost 12, right?
10.
10.
Why 12?
See, that's completely normal, like there, but
Yeah.
here it's completely right.
In
So
our
there are.
time, that was normal.
Sorry, that was the laundry. Like I could hear it being recorded. There's a lot of things happening in this house when there's only like, even if there's 3 people here. But yeah, let's just start with that in the beginning, like you're growing up, your upbringing, I'd say, and then we can contrast that with, the journey that you,
Okay.
like I guess the lessons that you learned when you were a kid, and then kind of going forward, right? And then how do you, have the resilience and grit to keep going, right? I keep talking a lot. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I grew up with a family of 10 siblings. My mother is half German and my father is one half Chinese. So we are a mixture, and my grandmothers are both Spanish. So it's a mixture of a lot of uh, cultural races. I was born in the Philippines and down south where it was turbulent because of the Muslim occupation of the Philippines. Uh, we are a Catholic country, as you know, so most of our colleges and universities are run by priests and nuns. And I graduated from the oldest Catholic university in Asia, which is called the University of Santo Tomas. So we even have a Spanish name for it, which is Saint Thomas More. We had a happy childhood even though we were 10 because luckily my father had good jobs. He was always the manager of General Motors. So we had free housing, free car, free driver. So we really had a good childhood. Whatever we wanted to do, my father was always able to provide. My mother is the former secretary of the First Lady's sister, which is Mrs. Marcos. So she had a lot of privileges in her job, and she was able to go in and out of the Malacanang Palace, which is the presidential palace, because she was close to the Marcos children. I graduated as a mass comm student, so my jobs were mostly in television. And when I came to America, I got lucky. I was able to enter also the famous ABC station. And I also work with our local Channel 28 in Downey. So I was able to pursue my career here in America for a while until I believe God called me back because I abandoned teaching for 20 years. But one day my friend just told me that there was a principal waiting for me to be interviewed. So I was so shocked because I didn't want to go back to teaching. But there it was. I was called by God, I believe, to teaching so that I can touch more children's lives. And so I was able to teach for 25 years in America and 3 years in the Philippines. And finally, I retired at the age of 66 in the Victor Elementary School District. And right now, I am a happy retiree or retarded, as what they call it most of
Okay,
the
all
time.
right. We're not allowed to be saying that word, but it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
it's okay. But you mentioned, well, first off, right, like your life, talking about it and summarizing it, it's so colorful. But maybe when you're living during those times, it didn't seem so black and white. Like it just seemed like it was changing a lot, right? So masscom for right now, I think in this today, we call it communications, just simple
communications,
communications.
yeah.
And a lot of people are going into same field with the same intention, like going into television. And you mentioned that you go back to teaching, but like that's a funny story that I think you kind of like jumped over. But going back to teaching, meaning that you did initially teach. So like what happened? Like what did you do? Like what was your first teaching experience? Saying that like maybe X amount of, like 20 years later you came back to it, but like what was your first instance of teaching? Because you're in mass communication, you want to be in television, so
Right.
that's a funny story. I remember that one.
I know. That was a turbulent time of my life when I started teaching. Actually, I was an activist that was fighting the government of Marcos. And we did a lot of marches, bombings, a lot of meetings, what to do with the government. And unfortunately, I got caught and I was put in, we call it a detention cell, not really a jail, mostly students from colleges that were caught fighting the government. And then my mom had a nun friend, so she asked my nun friend if she can take me out of the detention cell and turn around my life so I can be productive instead of just fighting the government. So at that time, our high school was a lot of drugs and government corruption. So a lot of us students were involved either in drugs, fighting it, or fighting the government. So my mom's friend, who was a nun, took me out of the detention cell and let me train with the nuns to become a teacher. So that's how I became a teacher. Uh, it was not what I liked to do, but that's what they decided to make me more productive, is to let me teach the children and then divert my energy to the children so I can touch their lives and also make something out of my life.
Right. Wow. This got really deep and dark really fast.
Yeah.
But that's great. I mean, it's funny because you initially had the intention of going to media, and you being an activist, you were trying to basically combat the media, right? Like you're just saying like these are things that are wrong, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in teaching. So that's like not those are basically three separate lives if you put them, if you kind of paint it on a canvas, I'd say.
Right.
And that's great. And then you from teaching, you're like, okay, this is not for me. I'm too young for this, or something. And the funny thing about it is this is all happening in the Philippines. It's not even in America yet.
Yep.
This is like literally your first chapter in life, and all of this stuff has already happened. And none of it, right? Like very little of it is very happy. Like a lot of it is moving forward, taking action wherever you can, and doing all that stuff. That's fun. That's fun. Would you say it was fun? Scale from like 1 to 10.
It was turbulent, but it was fun.
So like a solid 6.
Because I was fighting for a cause.
Right. And I think that's the main purpose that a lot of people talk about. It's like when you have something to fight for, I think that's what life worth living, they'd say. That's awesome. So,
thank you.
You said you can ease up, mommy. It's okay. You can rest a little bit. You can ease up a little bit.
Okay.
It's okay. Okay.
Okay.
So, you said you wanted to be in TV. So that kind of explains my good looks, I'd say. It kind of, yeah. But then you came to America with the intention of going back into media itself.
Yes.
And you actually got in. And like you mentioned, you were in ABC, which is still a big network now.
Yes, it's a real good and big network.
And you're doing, I think, if I remember all the stories correctly, you had the chance to like even see Michael Jackson because you worked in commercials and things like that.
I met a lot of, those that are in the TV series. I met a lot of them. They came to the station, and I usually tour them around and tell them about our station.
What's amazing is, again, we're like putting bullet points after major events in your life. Like when you came from the Philippines. So this is a conversation a lot of, I think, parents and children have in this generation between each other, is that the transition period between going from the Philippines to America was very, very, all or nothing, right? Like it was either like your family could afford to take you there or things like that. But a lot of things kind of didn't fall into your lap gracefully. Like you found your way to America somehow, right? Because Tita Joey found, or like, there was a lot of people that were going to America, your siblings, because there's 10 of them. And each of them has their own character. They all had their own way of life. Like no one wanted to be like a teacher and a teacher and a teacher. Like no one had. The funny thing about the family is that everyone is distinct. Like they're very distinct in their attitude and their persona. So you'll have like the most social people. You have the most musical people. You have the people that want to teach others. You have those that are really like big hosts of like events and parties and things like that. So how did that like play into your life? I'd say like less so about like what you did now, but like how was your upbringing, like your culture, right? Because you're in a household with like 10 other people. So how did you kind of carve your own personality within this ocean of siblings?
Well, even though we had a mom and dad, mom was the matriarch. So she was the one who groomed all of us, all 10 of us, So she's part German, so our house was very clean because the Germans are known for their cleanliness. And she was very strict also in our upbringing that we do the right thing. So it's like we can't watch TV until you finish your homework, or you cannot go out and enjoy until you finish your homework. It's always there's priorities in the house that we have to adhere to.
Right.
Because she won't just let us play, which, we all like when we're young, but she won't let us play until your homework is done. For her, schooling is number one in life because she said that's what's gonna take you far in your life. You have to have education and proper good manners and right conduct.
So
So
did you?
that's what our household was all about.
Wow. So do you think that bled over into your own parenting skills?
Oh, yes, definitely. Because it's all, the goodness in a home that everybody should be brought up to. So it's all like all the good things happen in our home. She did not allow anything that's negative in the home because she said, what you see here in our house is what you're gonna create in your own home when you marry someday.
Wow. Wow. That just needed to pause for a second. That's a lot. So what about dad?
Dad was like the disciplinarian. So if we do something that we're not supposed to do, she just calls dad to spank us. So we were spanked by belts. We all
Yeah.
grew up with spanking with belts.
Traditional way.
But we learned from we
Right.
learned from it. Dad seldom gets mad, but mom always calls him when we do something wrong.
Right.
And so he is the disciplinarian. He's
That's-
the background of mom.
Yeah, I think that's my theory too for Filipinos because there's a lot of, I think a majority of Filipino households, they don't condone nor even allow tattoos. But if we like pull our pants down and show like our right butt cheek, we can at least see the embedment of like the buckle of this belt, right? So we already have like these natural tattoos as Filipinos, I'd say. So I think that's my theory. It's just that we already have the most meaningful tattoo, which is which belt that Daddy was wearing that day. And then,
Yeah.
oh, there's the Tommy
It's
Hilfiger.
either a belt or a ruler.
Yeah, you'll be lucky if it's like a Perry Ellis belt and not the older ones. So that's great. Yeah, with that, with the parenting, right, and mentioning their own parenting styles, and not to delve into your own parenting style just yet, but that on top of, again, swimming amongst your 10 siblings, how did you kind of discover yourself and like your own unique persona, right? Because it's kind of hard to lose yourself in other people's interests. And it really does take a lot of inflection and reflection for you to understand what makes you you, right? Like what makes what you like and what and sometimes it can get really hard when you're surrounded with so many people in the same house all the time. But like you were saying, like a lot of them were doing their own things. So some of them were in and out of the house all the time. And so did you have like a way of like carving your persona within this entire like childhood that you had with your parents, like, being two opposites of the same coin, right? Like you have like you said, you have the matriarch, and then you also have the dad who is the disciplinarian, right? So it kind of like carves you as a person. But then you have on top of that 10 other siblings who all have very distinct personas and personalities. And you can like kind of nitpick, right? Do you think it was easier or harder finding yourself and like kind of discovering what you like and don't like amongst like 10 other people? Because, like you tend to, if you see your older siblings, you're like, oh, I like that. But he's like, do I really like that? Or I just like seeing like Tito Vic like play guitar, right? Like things like that. So how did you kind of navigate that as a, maybe, what are you, the eighth sibling? You're like the
Number
third to the...
seven. I'm
Number
number seven, yeah.
So you guys are numbers. Like,
Yeah, we were known by our numbers because we were so many.
so 7.
Yeah. Our household actually was a happy one. So we all grew up with happy personalities, We're all like with good sense of humor.
Right.
Because we never had like sadness in the house except for death of the child next to me. She had pneumonia when she was young, 9 months. So that was the only unhappy time of our life. But most of the time we're happy because Dad always plans an outing every weekend. So Friday night, he doesn't tell us what's the outing, but Friday night we're excited already because he'll just tell us that, bring something like this, bring your bathing suit or bring your rubber shoes because we're gonna go hiking, but we don't know what place and
That sounds
you
fun.
know
How
how
come we
we're
never
gonna
did that?
enjoy. So every weekend we had that. So we had we became very close to each other because we always enjoyed together. But of course, what shapes you up when you grow up are your experiences in life.
Right.
So we all had different experiences because we had different schools, and different friends. So that's where what shapes your life is your experiences outside the household.
Correct.
But your primary one, the strongest one, is the happy life because we really had a happy childhood.
Right. And that's like, I think something we've talked about before, where it's important. One, it's important to take breaks. I think that's something I'll mention in a future episode. Like wink, wink, is the significance of breaks and rest, and that role that it plays in our lives. Because we're living in a life where, back in the day we didn't have social media or any of our phones, so the best that you had was right in front of you, right? And for right now, we have the world in our hands, and like we're just so distracted with our phones that we can't like really take in the moments, or
Right.
because there's always something next, right? For you guys, Friday was, you said Friday, Saturday?
Yeah.
Friday,
that's when we pack the things that we need for the weekend.
wow, so that was the essential thing. Why didn't we do that when I was growing up? We didn't do that
We
Friday.
went to different places when you were growing up.
That's
We brought
true.
you to everything. We cruise,
Okay.
we went places.
That's
I
true.
said I like to let my child grow up in different, seeing different places.
There was one time that you guys pulled me out of school really early because we had to catch our ship to Ensenada.
Yeah.
And you told my fourth grade teacher that don't tell him any detail. Mm-hmm. Just say that we're going to pick him up.
It was a surprise.
Yeah, that was crazy. Wow. So that's how travel played a big role in your life.
Yeah.
And
here in America, I shift to traveling. So I took you to different places.
yeah, you've
that I
been
wanted.
everywhere. And
Everywhere.
you've been everywhere all at once, I think. So, what was it, 2 years ago? Before the pandemic happened, you had a bus tour to Europe. So travel plays a huge role in your life.
Yes.
And it's
I
like
went to
probably
Europe with my siblings.
it's probably one of the main, I'd say one of the main vehicles in our family too for discovering ourselves. Like we have to step outside of the house. Like it's good and it feels nice to be around each other, but there's always just been this itch where we have to be somewhere else because it feels like we can read as many books, we can enjoy each other's company as much as we can, and it's great. But like the real education is what we learn from our environment,
Yeah.
right? And the
Outside.
cultures, right? Even like when you came to America, it played a huge role. Like you were saying, like you would take cruises all the time, like from Florida, because you lived in Florida, right? And that's like the main docking station for Carnival Cruise Lines.
Yeah.
And you would just
That was
constantly,
our family home.
right? And no matter what, because you live between LA and Florida and Tampa, right? Tampa? And no matter what the location was, travel was always top priority in
Right.
some regard. Because even in LA, although it's not the Carnival Cruise Line main docking place, Long Beach was right there, and you guys immediately recognized that, and you knew that you had to go somewhere if you had the opportunity.
Right.
So, yeah, that's great. I'm glad we talked about that. The travel plays a huge role,
Yeah.
right? Like, I know it's a pandemic, but even with it kind of weaning off now, we're already talking about what we're going to do next, right? Because that's really important. Like, even if we're going to take the proper precautions and stuff, but going outside of our comfortability zone, which is the house, right? Because we do enjoy it to rest up and things like that. But
Right.
again, that itch to learn more is embodied within travel, which is great.
Right.
So even if it's going to a road trip, like up to San Francisco, like stopping by these weird restaurants and these weird, like, we stop by like Indian Reserve, like souvenir shops, and they're just so unorthodox.
And the Winchester House.
Winchester House is so
in
weird.
San Jose.
So weird. Yeah.
Because you learn a lot when you travel. You learn people's customs, tradition, their money, what it's worth. You learn a lot.
And also, it's great when you pick up some phrases from them, and you can bring it back
correct.
home to like when no one understands what you're saying, but only you do, and you just feel great about yourself, and the person feels very little about themselves. It's great.
Yes.
Condescension is the main vehicle in life. That's great. So we talked about your Philippine life growing up, everything. So assuming that the siblings went on their own ways. They went in their own separate directions, right? Like Tito Joey did his own thing, Tito Chi, everything.
Yeah.
But your transition to America, which is something I really want to talk about, which is funny because we just talked about travel. This was a decision that was made lightly, like going from the Philippines to America. Like, were you kind of put to a corner where, like, I have to go to America for a better life? Or was it like,
There were actually two reasons.
right,
We kind of felt that martial law is going to be declared
right,
in the
that's right.
Philippines because it
Yeah.
was so bad at that time. We were fighting Marcos, but we cannot just kick him out. So we decided if martial law is going to be declared, then we cannot travel, we can't go out of the country, we can't do anything.
Right.
Our hands are tied. So my mom decided to hurry up with her citizenship because she did not pick up Filipino citizenship. She had still American. And at that time, Marcos, that was the only lucky thing that he declared is that we can pick up any citizen that we have or we can have dual citizenship. So my mom picked up her American citizenship and one of our friends, a senator, said that you better get out of the country now because it's gonna get worse. So that was reason number one. The second reason is my brother, who has been traveling all over the world, said that since mom is an American citizen, why don't we try living in America and have a different kind of life, maybe a better life? Because at that time, the government was just so corrupt that we cannot live a normal life anymore. So those were the two reasons. And so we got out at the right time.
Was it just you by yourself, or you were with siblings when you left?
Depending on our
It was kind of
birth
staggered,
date,
right? Yeah.
they let us exit the country
Oh.
when it is safe. So your
Interesting.
Tito Chit went first because of her date of
She was
birth.
older.
So it
Yeah.
was, according to date of birth.
That's interesting.
So whoever was in danger of not being a citizen anymore was sent out first.
So-
that they will be able to catch the what they call they called it's different word for it, not as an escapee or a fugitive but it's a different one. It's according to your birth date that we have to be out of the country right away.
Wait, that's interesting. So the case was your departure times were staggered among the siblings.
Yes, according to your date of birth.
But the main hope was that you'll just meet each other in America. Like, hopefully, like, you'll see, like, someone, the older sibling who's already there will pick you up from the airport, things like
Yes.
that. And speaking of that, oh, wait, sorry, you're going to say something?
No, whoever gets here first gets to pick the
responsible.
rest from the airport.
And the point A in the Philippines, which was, where were you flying from?
From Manila.
From Manila. And then you were flying to,
We had to enter through Hawaii at that time. And then from Hawaii, we are checked by the immigration. And then you can proceed to Los Angeles.
wow. Okay, so LA was the spot where you went from the Philippines.
Hawaii was our entrance to America, actually. All our papers were checked there and everything.
Did you have to stay there for long, or?
And then Los Angeles was just like a local flight
Right.
from Hawaii.
Right. Okay, so then you landed yourself in LA from Hawaii. So how long were you in Hawaii for?
Only about 2 hours for checkup.
Just 2 hours? I thought it
Only
was like
2 hours,
I
yeah.
thought you were gonna say like 4 months or something.
No, we were not even allowed to get out of the airport.
Oh my goodness! I
Because
thought-
we're considered, foreigners.
You're right. I thought you were gonna say some weird story about like how you were like one of the velociraptors at Jurassic Park, the movie filming, and trying to make
I
ends
wanted
meet.
so much to see Hawaii, but we were not allowed to even get out.
You're just oh man, yeah. That's kind of like it feels like an Ellis Island kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that.
Like it's
yeah.
just kind of like the stopover where to ensure that you can actually go.
Yeah,
So then-
Hawaii was the big checkpoint for people entering America.
Oh my gosh! And then you were in LA. Which part of LA did you end up in? Downey on
I
Media?
ended up in Downey because that's where my sister stayed in Downey. So she got an apartment, and then all of us who came later, stayed in her apartment.
Okay, interesting. And then you lived right next to the Carpenters.
Yeah, our carpenters were our neighbors when we already got a house. Our house was right next to the carpenters.
I just put that two and two together. That's why. Well, the elementary school, one of them I went to was named Carpenter Elementary. and they were the Patriots. That's what their mascot was. It wasn't even a carpenter. Like, it doesn't make no sense. It doesn't make any sense that it's called Carpenter Elementary, but our mascot is a Patriot. But then I realized that it's called Carpenter Elementary because the Carpenters probably lived there.
No, they
lived
were
in the
the
area.
biggest donor.
They're the biggest donor of the city.
They gave a lot of money to build that school.
See, we went from you living at home, like, living a normal Filipino life in Manila, Bohol, or whatever, because you guys kept moving back and forth, to now you're living like a couple doors down from the Carpenters. Mm-hmm. This is not predictable at all.
I know, yeah.
This is you're just trying to.
Everything was a blessing when we came to America.
Right. And it's dependent on how you see it too, because I feel like some people, if they were put in your shoes, they would see it as like, what the heck's going on? They would read it with a lot of frustration. Mm-hmm. But I think you had a lot of hope, right? And optimism.
Right.
Sarcastic optimism?
Some of them.
Okay. That was a terrible plug for a show that people are already watching. No one's watching. No one's listening. But now you're in Downey, and then you were there for a few years or months or something, and then you found yourself in Florida.
Well, my brother, who was traveling in Europe, saw this ad that said that, they're building a new community in Florida. And then his friend said, if you want, we can fly you there for free.
Right.
And then you can look at the community and see if you like it. Because at that time, my brother was looking for a place for my parents.
Right.
Because California was too cold. Mm-hmm. And the closest to the Philippine climate is Florida.
What the heck?
Yeah. So
you're the first person.
Okay, I'll fly over there and check out the houses.
You're literally the first person to say that California is too cold. Like, that is very Filipino.
Yeah, but that's how my parents found it.
Right.
For them, it was too cold.
Right. And then Florida, which is, like, you're right. Everyone's saying that it's like the optimal place to live if you want something that's very, very closely simulated to the Philippines.
Yes.
Because you have, like, the hot rain, the gusts of wind, the tree, everything. Like, everything about it, it feels very close to home.
Yeah,
so,
climate is the same. We have 6 months rain and 6 months hot.
Interesting.
So it's similar to the Philippines.
See, it's weird because going off of what we were saying that it's unpredictable, you were in LA and you were probably already kind of settling down a bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I live next to, the Carpenters. Life is great. And then now you're moving to Florida for let's say the betterment of your parents. Like, you want to be there
for
your
my parents.
And I mentioned this in a previous episode too, that like a lot of the navigation of your life, its main anchor was your parents, right? Like, you kind of went where they went just to ensure that they were good and that they were okay, right?
Correct.
And do you think that, going into that, just a little mini aside, do you think their reason why they're an anchor there is because of, like, it clearly places family at a high value, but there's a concept in Philippine culture called utang ng loob, which is like, indebtedness, like, of the heart, right? Like, they gave you so much love. Like, you glue up when you said that when you were reminiscing about the times that you met up on Fridays as a family, and on top of that, there's many more memories that you probably had. And when you're growing up and you realize that you're also independent now and you're capable, you want to return the favor in some way. Right. So, would you say that it is like a very solid example of utang ng loob, like kind of indebtedness of the heart?
Yeah, that's very common in Filipino families.
Right.
That you are indebted to your parents because even education we don't pay. They pay for all our education.
Right.
So that's the only thing that we can do is repay, the goodness of our parents. So we kind of stay with them, take care of them until you find somebody to marry, and then that's the only time you leave the family.
Yeah, there's a lot of cases, and this is not even restricted to Filipinos, where people stay or they start in a foreign country that's not America, right? So they're technically not foreign. Foreign is relative. But sometimes when the parents want a better future for their children, and luckily you're not in this case, but the parents like basically give them like money to leave the country and start a new life somewhere else, right? Like, for instance, like the child wants to get out of, let's say, like Philippines or something, and they're just barely getting by and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden, the parents magically have the funds to give the child to go start their own life somewhere else because that's what they really want. They know for a fact that they probably have a better chance somewhere, especially your time, right? With martial law, there's probably a lot of families that had to use their life savings to send their children out of that state,
Yeah.
which is terrible.
To exit the country.
Right. And I think that really infused and rooted the utang na loob, where like, the parents really support us in any sort of way, right? Maybe a little bit. Nah.
Yay.
I'm just kidding.
I do.
But
All the way. We
Okay,
always
all the
support
way.
our children all the way.
except this, yeah, she's the sole listener of this podcast. This is why you're the first guest. And I think, yeah, that really solidified it for a lot of people, and it kind of bled into future generations. And although there might be, especially in this generation where a lot of people are reflecting on it, and there's a lot of parents, they're like, you owe me this, you owe me that, right?
Yeah.
Like, we grew up in a family where no one's ever said that. No one's ever said, you owe me this, you owe me
Yeah,
that.
we
It's
don't.
kind of implied where, like, it's from the sake of your own goodwill and your good heart. Like, if you think you owe someone something,
Yeah.
and, like, it's just hope, hope in the heart from the receiver that, like, hopefully they will pay back the favor someday, which is, some people can take it in a toxic route. We're like, oh, they're always expecting something. But within our family, luckily enough, no one expects anything really in return, but we
No.
still give as much as we
Yeah.
can. Like, I'd say, when, like you were saying, is like when you get a paycheck, usually you kind of reserve it for like family. There's like a portion there that like, like you support them in some sort of way, and like
Yeah.
it feels good. Like it doesn't always have to be about yourself, and like that can be your first goodwill, right? Like you can give back to your family, you can give back to as many people, but usually the family is the first people, that you kind of want to contribute back to.
Yeah,
because
that's your priority.
right. Yeah, and that kind of lives on here. So for everything that you've done for me, I just want to show my appreciation by, inviting you to this podcast. It's the least I can do. So consider the debt paid for you, between you and me, by you being here in this podcast. So I owe you nothing anymore. After this, nothing else.
No, there's no utang na loob.
Yeah.
We're trying to stop that custom because
A lot of people
it's so
feel-
negative.
Yeah, that's
you
why.
expect a lot from the children, so we want it done to them out of love, not because of utang na loob.
Right. And like I said, like, fortunately, we're in a family where it is that case. But I feel like there are a lot of families, not even Filipino, where there are elders that really respond negatively to younger generation. Now the young generation, where they're saying, you owe me this. Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be here. And that's like, of course, that is going to feed. That's why you and me both don't believe in utang ng loob, like promoting that term, because it used to be meaning something where like it was very genuine, right? It wasn't something that you should be saying in someone's face, right? That's why we
Right.
talk about it like it's a theory almost, like it's not a fact. Like it's a fact that it lives and it's embedded in our culture, but it's in turn, it's a theory, because if people are saying like, you owe me this, owe me that, then we're actually heading in the opposite direction, right? In terms of love and endearment, like
Right.
we're kind of tainting relationships by saying we owe people anything, right? Like it's you owe me this, or that person owes me that. Like it's not right, right? And like going back to like one thing that I always think about too is like our relatives. And this is not just Filipinos again. This is all the things we're talking about are very generalized. It can be generalized in a lot of minorities, families. Is relatives would give you like money, like at a party, and it's not even celebrating you. Like it can be like your mom's wedding, like your mom's like not wedding, sorry, your mom's like birthday, and then the tita will go to you and just like, hey, here's not even tell you the amount. They'll just
Yeah.
like put a fist out like this. And you just have to take it. You have to play a little tango with them. And it's a $20 bill when they unravel their palm. And you're like, no, I don't want that. And then you're like, okay, whatever. And it's not even about you, right? It's just,
Yeah.
it's not even an indebtedness to a specific person at that point now. It's a contribution,
Yeah,
right? And
the
it's
elders like to do that with the children.
right. And the most genuine form of this utang ng loob is, again, when it's unspoken, where it's not like black or white. No one's keeping score at any regard, right? Because at this point, I owe across all the family members, maybe, like this is a guesstimate, but maybe $5 billion. Like because of all that, the secret, black market palm $20 bill in the hand. Sometimes it's 100. No, I'm just kidding. It's never 100. It's usually 20. It's usually a 20 or a 50. It's
20 or 50.
never surpassing 50, unless you're really, really well off.
Yeah.
But yeah, just going back at that. I know we made it an aside too, but yeah, we're like, I think it's important to discuss that again because
Yeah.
there are people supporting you. So I like the whole point of this, right? I should have said this in the beginning, but it's to again embrace the journey that we're going through, right? Because a lot of the listeners are young; they're really young, and they need to understand that there's not a single point in your life where you're like, I need to be here, I need to be here, right? Like you can set goals, you can set habits or whatever, but life is ever changing, right? And there's a lot of points where it really anchors down, right? Where like you're saying, like traveling is important because you educate you're not educated about just the culture outside of yourself, but also about yourself, like how you respond to the environments and stuff.
Right.
But also now we're delving into a little bit more of the environment and the people that we're surrounding ourselves with, and like how we're like you're mentioning, like you had a dad and a mom who were very different, but it kind of coalesced into something that built you into who you are, the foundational person. And then as we grow older, right, like the utang ng loob is a really important, like, you know, indebtedness of the heart. Let's just say that. That shouldn't be talked about, but it is like lack of a better term, a tattoo kind of in like on our family,
Right.
and each family, right? Like this respect, and I think it all comes from like a genuine place of respect. It's not a place of keeping score or anything like that, like not a place of power. And that's where you're saying like a lot of the toxicity kind of falls into, where like there is a place of power, right? Like you owe me this, you owe me that, right? Because you feel owed, like you think the world owes you something, or people owe you something because you did something like maybe picking up bread for them or something, but you don't, right? It has to come from a place of saying like, I'm doing this out of genuine love. Like I'm doing this because I love the person.
Right.
And you don't expect anything in return, right? Like it's not something like, you know, it's great when you have something in return, but it should be like a very altruistic, selfless act. And that really propels us. And how did we get into this? I keep talking. We got into this because you place a high value on your family. As one person, like, so going back to the story, you're going from LA to Florida, and the main reason why you're going to Florida, because you kind of settled down in LA already, was because your parents are going. Like you literally decided to drop everything in LA, even though it's like almost like the most ideal suburban life, for the sake and health and well-being of your parents, because your parents thought it was too cold, which is like, you know, third world problems at this point. You know, it's like, really? They're too cold. Anyone, like, you know, a normal person, like, really, you're too cold. Like, just deal with it.
For them, that was their number one problem in Los Angeles. It's too cold for them.
And like normal people, not normal, but like regular people would be like, no, like deal with it. You know, because like they're older and like, you know, they're withering and stuff. But you were like, no, my family is very important, right? So we talked about understanding the world and everything, but also understanding your values, which is really important. Right, that's one thing that we always promote in this podcast. Hopefully, when you listen to it, because you're the only listener, you get that from the podcast values. Why do you look at me like that? But placing a very high understanding on your values. You have to understand yourself, right? And you can use travel to kind of promote that, but then also, right, understanding what your list looks like for you, for us, right? Because we share almost the same, very similar values. His family is at top. And the normal person in nowadays would be like, deal with the cold. Like, that's what's the problem, you know? Send them to a retirement home. But no, like, you let them frolic in the suburban home. They literally, it's kind of like the same thing, like, as childhood. Like, they're in the house, you're in the house with them, but you have a little bit more independence. But then now they're saying, it's too cold, and if there's an opportunity, we'll move. And now you're dropping everything that you started in LA, right? So now your life is going in another direction.
Correct.
Right? And now you're going to Florida, which is interesting. So how was your life there? How long did you live there? So Lola and Lolo went to Florida. You followed suit.
I had to follow because I had to take care of them. So I had a very good job in Los Angeles working with the county office of education. But like what you said, I had to drop everything because I had to go with my parents since they will be new in the state. So I have to see to it that they are settled down before, you know, I can follow up again or push through with my life.
Right.
So I had them settled there. And luckily, God blessed me with a good job, and that's where I applied for ABC, and then pursued my mass communication. And of course, luckily, I got the job, so I took care of my parents. So I had an apartment close to the station. So every weekend, I go to their place because they were in the middle part of Tampa, which is called Zephyr Hills. That's like a suburb of Tampa. And yeah, we bought them a home there. And so they were living there, and I had an apartment in the city, and I would just visit and check on them every weekend.
Wow. So backtracking a little bit, that's amazing. Is the moment? Do you recall the moment where you realize that you're going to move to Florida? Like, did you feel frustrated, like sad that you're leaving like a good job in LA before you move to Florida?
Yes.
Like, were you like I'm pretty sure there was a maybe slightly unhealthy level of uncertainty, or like, what am I going to do in Florida? So how
I
did you
wasn't
cope with
really
that?
sad, but I was like scared that I
Right.
will start again my life in Florida.
So how did you push through that feeling? Like, how did you regain your hope and optimism when moving to Florida?
Well, I just fixed my priorities. So my
Right.
priority are my aging parents. So I was just thinking of that
Going off the
before
family
myself.
value.
Right.
Yeah.
That was it. So that was behind my mind that,
Right.
it's for my parents. So I have to do it.
Right. And it's a matter of not what you can and can't control, but like what matters to you and what doesn't. Or what doesn't matter, what matters to you the most, right? Like for you, it was like, oh, do I like this really nice job? It's really nice, right? Because in media, it fit exactly, it was like cookie cutter almost. Like you were made for that position. But you care about your parents way more than any job, any
Yes.
salary. And like, again, this is a lesson that's not restricted to parents. Like we have people that we care for, that we're always going to be there for.
Yes.
And the question is, do you value anything else other than these, like more, do you value anything else more than these said people? And luckily for us, for our family, it's we always put family first. So it's always a very easy question to ask ourselves. And although the circumstances is really hard to, in the moment, to make that decision, like for you, it was like, should I move to Florida? Right, to abandon this job, and maybe I won't have maybe I'll have a worse job in Florida. You are willing to take that leap of faith, that risk for them,
For them.
for them. It's beautiful.
Yeah, because we bought them a house, and somebody has to take care of them.
Yeah, because everyone else
That's
was
a new
busy.
state.
Right.
And we all siblings were here in Los Angeles, and I cannot just let them go there with nobody taking care of them. So I had to do the sacrifice, left my
goodness.
job, and went with them.
So what helped you push through that time? It was like saying, "There's something. There will be something." Just being optimistic. And actually,
Yeah.
I would say, coming off of what you were saying is knowing that your parents were there no matter what. Like you would go wherever they go and you would feel safe. Like as long as your parents were there and you were there for them, that's all that mattered in the world.
Correct. Yeah, because they were aging, they cannot be left alone.
And you wanted to maximize your time with them. But it's and like you were saying is that all the other siblings were busy doing their own thing, but you were kind of the main point person. Sorry, number 7. Excuse you. I'm not
Yes.
gonna say mom anymore. I'm gonna say number 7. So number 7,
The lucky 7.
the lucky 7 was lucky enough to have befall on them the responsibility of handling taking care of the parents.
Yes. There were 3 of us that were not married yet at the time, but my brother was living abroad in Germany, and
Yeah.
then my other sister was far, living in San Jose.
Yeah.
So I was the only one left with mom and dad. So when we bought that house, I was the only one with them that I had to move with them and left my job.
So I want to kind of clarify and detail something really quick. And this is a slight spoiler warning. And we started in the Philippines. Now we're in Florida, right? From LA, right? There's a lot of things that happen. You're using a good amount of your 20s and 30s doing all this stuff, right? Like this is something that we can't discount. Like we didn't mention this because remember, like we're living in a time where like a 22-year-old is having anxiety about getting a job and stuff like that. And, like the 22-year-olds now are acting like 50-year-olds back then, right? They're worrying about things that they shouldn't be worrying about at such a young age. But like for, a lot of people, they're worrying like I need to be, married by 29, like 30, whatever. But you were married at the ripe age of
42.
42. And you had a child at,
Oh, I'm sorry. I got married at 39 and had a child when I was 42.
wow. And that's deemed really, really old.
Very old.
Like there's cobwebs around the like the womb already. Like at
Yeah,
that
I
point.
didn't even expect I would have a child,
Right.
because I married late because of I was taking care of my parents, so
Yeah.
I had to marry late.
So going off of that, right? Like knowing your values, and like I said, like you squeezed out a good amount of your, and this is a romanticism that we have in our generation, where we're like 20s and 30s are the best time of your life,
Right.
and you can't waste it on anything else except yourself. Like you have to take the risk to promote your own well-being. You have to go travel, do as much as you can as a 22-year-old even. Like they're trying to do as much as they can, right? Like we're always trying to be busy, busy, busy. But for you, you're like kind of silencing everything else, and you're like, no, my parents are aging, right? For a typical person, like you're crazy. You're 20, 30. You should have a kid by now. You should be married by now.
Right.
How are you still single? But you care about your parents who have already lived your life. Like you're literally like some people would say you're wasting your life taking care for people that already lived their full life technically, right? So at that age, typically, like I said, a person would say, "Oh, put them in a retirement home." Right? Like if it's too cold, then they can put on the heater in the retirement home.
Yeah.
But for you, you're like, no, we want them to have the best life they can, and whether that be moving from LA to Florida or back, right? And you're using those prime 20, 30s of your years dedicated to your family, and you had no regrets, nothing.
No regrets, because I also enjoyed my singlehood. I enjoyed. I
Oh, what does
did
that mean?
everything I wanted to do on my own. So, aside from taking care of my parents, I really enjoyed my single life. So
Right.
I have no regrets.
So did you, growing up, you didn't have any of those goals where like I need to be married at this time or have a kid?
That was never in the family. We married when we felt like, we wanted to marry.
But there was a lot of
I
siblings
really
that-
was not thinking about that at all.
Right. But there was a lot of siblings that did marry early. Like they did get married before 30, right? And things like
No,
that.
they got married after college.
After
A lot
college.
of them
So that's
married
still
right
that's-
after college.
That's the prime time for every generation now. Whereas like after like you typically meet your soulmate in college, sometimes doesn't happen.
Right, yeah.
But like for you, right? Like was it hard ignoring those stereotypes where like I need to be, because you said like
No.
it seems very easy for you. Like I don't
Yeah.
don't
'Cause-
want to, like you're like an outlier, right? I don't want to be married at 30.
Right,
Like I
yeah.
want to take care of my parents. Like that's weird.
Because I saw with my siblings that they were tied up with responsibility so early. So I said, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to enjoy my single life. And then when I feel like settling down, that's when I will settle down.
So what is a good life lesson that you have for, let's say, 20 or 30-year-olds? For those that are like, like we said, we're in a generation where we're romanticizing your best years are your 20s and 30s. And beyond that, like nothing happens.
Right.
But clearly you got married at 39. You had a kid at 41. 40? 41?
42.
42. Oh my Lord. See, okay. But after that, your whole life is still colorful beyond that, right? We don't want to get too much into detail about that because, with me in your life, of course, it's extremely colorful. You don't have to agree with that. I was just kidding.
Your life
Yeah,
is
so
colorful.
what's a good... No, I was saying your life with me in it, There's a lot more renditions of the typical colors. That aside, what is a good lesson that you have for people that are coming out of college? Like I said, there is a good majority of people thinking that they have to hit these certain ages with certain circumstances. Like we say, like, oh, by the time I get out of college, I should meet my soulmate. Or like I should be married by I'm 25 or 26, right? And that's why we have like really young people taking on jobs that are cushy. And they kind of just stay in that job until they're really old, right? Until they retire, because they're not complacent, but like, they have those goals. They have, right? Let's get married, find someone, get a kid, and then find a job that pays for the family. And that's it. That kind of ends right there. But for you, you didn't like really care about any of those social structures.
Right.
So what is a good lesson that you have for people that are, we can look at the camera for this one. You can like look deep into the camera.
Okay. The lesson I can give you, you young ones, millennials, that's what we call them, because we are the baby boomers and you are the millennials now. So it's your era now. The one that I can advise you is to go out there. There's life out there. You don't have to follow tradition. Like after college, you have to marry and settle down and have a family. No, go out there. There's life out there. Don't rush things. Let things happen and enjoy them before you finally feel like, you have to settle down and have a lot of responsibilities. So until you are ready, go out there and enjoy life. Just be happy. And then time will come when you will feel it in your heart that it's time to settle down and have families and obligations in life.
That was deep. See, you've never told me that in my face. So I'm just kidding. Yeah, you have.
I always remind you
That's
to
really
be
important
happy
too.
and enjoy life.
Thank you for that. That was amazing. And there's no script. There's no like poster board that says that. That came from the heart because that's from all the experience.
Those are just traditions, that you have to throw away.
My goodness, yeah. So that's something that I wanted to ask you about too, is that I think a lot of anxiety and stress falls under this sense of tradition, right? Like it's like cemented. It's like cementing our potential for a lot of people. And like we said, the utang lang loob, right? The indebtedness of the heart. It feels like a cement, like a quicksand that you can't get out of because you feel indebted to someone.
Right.
But that's the point where it becomes negative, where people think they owe these people something, or like someone thinks they are owed something. So that's very important to know, especially coming from a boomer. Yes, boomer.
Yeah.
That you
and
should.
For the other generation.
Yeah, that you shouldn't be lost in translation with tradition. Like that shouldn't be the sole dictating. That's the wrong choice of words. That shouldn't be like the thing that is navigating you through life. Like tradition shouldn't be something holding you back.
No.
It's something that you can refer back to, sure, saying like these are the traditions, but being an outlier, there's nothing wrong with that. What would you say? Like being different.
You have to live a happy life. So don't let anybody push you. You've got to live your life and be happy.
And that happiness that you're referring to, like that happy, like being having a happy life, is usually defined as you go, right? Like you have to kind of figure out for yourself, and you shouldn't let tradition muddle that definition, because tradition can easily say that. For a lot of people, like happy is, like we said, getting married at a certain age, meeting your love of your life in college, and then doing all that stuff like X, Y, and Z, and that is a happy life for a lot of people, and it just stops right there. But your happiness was changing a bit, right? Like your happiness was going to America, spending time with your family. But that was a constant though. Like spending time with family was the happiness that you felt. And like if you got married so soon, you wouldn't have been able to spend that much time with your parents. You wouldn't have been going on cruises every other week.
Yeah, you'd be tied down with responsibilities, with family.
Right, yeah. And yeah. So what are you trying to say about this family here now?
That's why I'm pushing you to enjoy life, not to get married right away.
Right. Yeah.
Enjoy life, and then you will just feel it in your heart if it's time to settle down and, be able to handle family responsibilities.
Correct. And there are a lot of things in life that, again, it's not a line. Like, it's not a straight line that we live. Like, it's going in multiple different directions. And even though you're at the time in your life where you're retired, or you deem yourself retired, right? That's the R word that we're using. You recently, right? Like the word retired feels so sad because it's just like you kind of stop and you're just like waiting for your time to come. But in your case, you just got a dog, so it's just like it just keeps going. Like your happiness just keeps evolving. And I'm really happy to hear that Moni hasn't barked yet.
Yeah, I know she's sleeping right now.
Yeah, so see, like, again, happiness is an ever-changing term, and that's a very good way of putting it, that, yes, we do feel entitled to giving back to the traditions that we all know and know dear, but it shouldn't be something that holds us back in any sort of way.
Yeah.
It can be good, like, again, a good reference point for where we want to go, but you ultimately know exactly what you like and what you don't like, right? Like for you was like, for Filipinos, like it's really important to be a doctor or a nurse in some regard, but for you it was very different. You're like, I want to be in mass comm, right? And like a lot of your siblings too are in the creative arts, like the Joey's like doing dance and like marketing and things like that. And
Yeah.
it was like kind of follow your own path, right? It wasn't the parents telling you exactly who you
See,
need to
that's
become.
why each one of us were different
Yeah.
because we followed
Promote
what
that
we wanted.
lesson.
Yeah.
Exactly. And your parents.
Nobody got pushed. We just followed what we wanted.
Yeah. And it's the most detrimental thing to tell someone what they need to be, because we always begin every child's life in elementary school, ask them what they want to become. But then I think the most stressful thing is them answering that question genuinely, and then they're going home and then their parents are telling them, no,
Yeah.
that's not what
You have
you're
to
going to be
You
this.
have to be that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll kind of realize that when you look at these really important figures in history, that they kind of followed their childlike curiosity. Like a lot of them were very great readers. They were very good like at certain things. And then later on in life, they reinvigorated that inner child in them again, right? Like even the main architectures or the main artists were really weird kids. They would do weird things. They would like paint images and stuff when they're supposed to be doing math. And little do you know, that's like Picasso, or like even like the biggest titles of artists that we know nowadays. So don't feel so obligated to someone else's commentary on your life.
Correct.
Even though it's very easy
Follow
to
your heart.
follow your heart. And it's very hard nowadays because of all the social media. And like we
Yeah.
think that we need to go to an Ivy League for this, or we have to go to medical school for that. But everything that you need is kind of right in front of you. Right? Would you agree? I keep talking. Sorry, you can talk more. The ratio of me talking and you is like 500 to 1.
Now that's okay because you are trying to clarify things, what is needed. But one thing I can tell you is fix your priorities in life. You have to know your priorities in life. And then you move from that.
Yeah. And there's something also more, there's something that I wanted to talk about with you too, is that we live in a culture where productivity is very highly valued, right? Like we have people, and sometimes we are the people that have to schedule every minute of the day for something. And we love saying that we're busy, especially if like someone that we haven't talked to in a long time wants to spend time with us. We always say, oh, we're busy for that, busy for that. And what is your opinion on that? Like, what is like the way that we're romanticizing this hustle culture, right? This busyness, right? Like what is your thought process of that? Like, what do you think about all that? Like, you know what I mean, right? Like the people are saying, oh, I'm too busy for this, I'm too
Yeah.
busy for that. And you never really see them anymore. And then when they want to hang out, your relationship's already tanked already because they've said no so many times. Like a good example would be if you have a friend and they keep saying no for like, let's say like this past 6 occasions that you invited them to. And then the 7th one that you have, you don't invite them because you already know that's going to be a no.
Right.
And then they get really upset. They're like, why didn't you invite me? It's like, well, you're going to say no anyways because you're busy, right? Like you're a busy guy, right? Or a busy person. So what is your opinion on like these people and nowadays that really want to just be busy all the time? Like they don't want to make, again, like the priorities get muddled. You know what I mean?
Actually, you adopted the American way of life. That's the problem. The fast-paced life, You need to slow down, like what they said, smell the roses. You got to slow down because when you slow down, then that's when you taste life. That life is really good, and that you really need to be happy to enjoy life. You need to slow down because the American way of life is not good. It's so fast-paced that you don't realize that you procrastinate a lot of things, don't enjoy a lot of things, and don't appreciate a lot of things because you just
Right.
want to go, and you don't even taste life, that it is really good if you slow down.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this too, is like when people are like, oh my God, they, like their whole life kind of flashes before their eyes, or like their children grow up so fast, and it's because sometimes we get lost in work and we prioritize work over watching our kids grow or watching other people grow. And there was a conversation I had with a friend where we all were really close at one time, and all of a sudden one of them moved away, and like one of the main anchor points of our friend group, and it's just like we took it for granted, like we didn't talk to each other, and now that person's like gone, right? Like, and those are times that we can't buy back. Like there were so many opportunities for us to, like you said, smell the roses and spend time with the people that matter the most, or spend time doing the things that mattered the most to us.
Yes.
But then we wait until the last minute, until we kind of juice out all of our energy, right? Like yes, we have as much money as we can. Yes, we have all this great stuff, but are we actually happy? Because we took for granted,
Yes.
like you said, like for you, what makes you happy is being there for your parents. And like I said, like you could have been the most hustled person, right? Like you got a good job, you're going to do the best in your job, be promoted to the top tier person, but that didn't matter to you. What mattered to you was being there for your family and really spending time with them, maximizing every minute of every day with them. Even like you said, right? Like after work in Florida, you would just rush back home just to ensure that they're okay and
Yeah.
you can enjoy with them because
I spend weekends with them, take them
you
places.
had an outhouse, yeah. So like that reciprocation, right? Like you're not only making them happy, right? Like or just being there, but they make you happy,
Yeah.
right? But it's just like you being there and living in the moment. And luckily enough, we didn't have smartphones back then. I mean, unfortunately, we can't capture those moments anymore, like as well as we do now. But all those memories live in your heart now, and like no photo gallery can replace that.
Right.
Because this is one thing I want to talk about in the future too, and hopefully you can join in the conversation. Is that like people don't remember what you did for them, but they do remember how you made them feel.
Correct.
And like no matter where Lolo and Lola are, yes, there are a lot of things. There are so many things that you did for them. They can't remember all of them for sure, especially with Lola who had Alzheimer's. But she does remember how you made them feel wherever they are.
Right.
Right. And like same with, Tita Joan, with your sister, who's it was like having like the little preliminary quirks of Alzheimer's already. And it's really hard for her to remember things. Like you can feel that she still feels you. She still feels who you are. Right. Like, and it's interesting with music
Still
too.
feels the love. Yeah.
And that's crazy because like for her, like it's sad because she'll be like, "Who is this? Who are you?" Right? Like, or like, "Where am I?" But when she's singing, she like memorizes all the lyrics, and it's not because she memorizes the lyrics and it's muscle memory, but because she remembers the emotions that she feels when she sings those songs or talks to these people, right? Like when the first thing that Tia Joan does, like when she talks to you, I don't know if you noticed, but she like touches you. Like she touches you because she remembers how you, like, like the person, like the being, like, oh, this is the person that made me feel this. Not like,
the feeling never dies.
yeah, because
it's always there in
if
your
you bring
heart.
up a memory for her, she probably won't remember it anymore, which is sad. But like she remembers how loved she is by specific people. And although like the name is, it's a very minute thing. Like sometimes she struggles with names. She loves everyone. And like each person she loves she loves everyone equally. And it does take her a little bit of time, but that feeling never dies. Those sometimes, like I said, like the brain, like it's not good at retaining memories sometimes. Like we're very forgetful.
Right.
But our general friendships and relationships are present because of how much we feel, how love we feel with those people. And that's why we tend to gravitate towards those said people. It's not because of what they did, because what they did can be easily forgiven or forgotten, but how they made you feel as a person, like loved,
The
cared
feelings
for.
are intact. They don't, disappear when you have Alzheimer.
That's
the feelings are still
That's
there.
the craziest thing too.
Yeah.
With the Alzheimer's thing, it's just I know this is a very controversial topic because this is not a science podcast at all. And although I'm a scientist in my own regard, scientist myself, the general case study of like Alzheimer's, with Tita Joan and with Lola is that yes, like you can feel those little flames in their eyes of which they can feel you still. Like they don't remember you, right? They don't remember like the nitty and gritty details of like how old you are and things like what the thing you did when embarrassing that you did when you were younger, but they do remember how they feel when they're around you. And that's what's beautiful about like, the disease is really bad and hopefully we find a cure very soon and things like that. But what's beautiful about that is that it kind of minimizes all the other unnecessary details. It kind of narrows down to how that person feels. Like to the Joan, like we still feel equally loved, even if not more, by her like than before she was diagnosed. And it's just her company, her presence, right? Even though she's very forgetful about whose house this is, who that person is, she's still loving and caring and energetic in her own way.
Yeah.
And that's what made her in our eyes. And she's still this consistent person that we know. So it's not about the name that matters or the person that's in front of us, but it's just like who that person is, like what makes them them. And that's not something that you can vocalize sometimes. How someone makes you feel, you can't vocalize it. So I keep talking again. Sorry.
That's okay.
But yeah, so why don't we fast forward a little bit? So now you're in Victorville. Now you have a kid who's, six-figure earner. Who's a major. Why are you laughing? Okay, I'm not a six-figure earner. I'm just kidding. See, that's why we're sharing.
Things that you keep from me. So
No, absolutely not. That's why we're using the same microphone because we can. Oh, there's the dog.
awake.
She's awake.
She heard us.
Oh God. So that's why we're using the same mic because I can't afford and. This podcast isn't monetized, and if it was, I would be able to afford maybe a bag of chips. That'd be great. But it's okay. But fast forwarding, you are retired, so you have a lot, and we were stricken with a pandemic. And fun fact, I graduated and you retired at the same time.
Same year.
Same year, the pandemic year, which is beautiful. But we were stuck with each other for a year until I kind of up and went and found a job.
Right.
Which I'm currently at, the teaching thing. Sad.
Which was nice. You were back home.
Yeah. But there was a lot of things that fell into place where we were able to reflect on what matters most to us. Even though we couldn't travel, which is, again, the main point of topic, the first thing we talked about, which we couldn't do anymore. In this podcast, we talked about traveling. But we couldn't do that anymore. But we were stuck with each other and, we held Zooms with family and it was fun. Everything was fun. Everything was still intact
We still
regardless.
did fun things, yeah.
So again, it's not about like the physicality of things, like the physical, tangible things that we see, but it's like how we feel and how we can replicate that in any form.
Correct.
So now you lived through the pandemic, which is great. It's amazing.
2 years.
So what did you learn now? So we're in this point of your life. Like again, a lot of people retire and like they take 10 years to reflect on their entire life, but for you, it was accelerated because you were stuck at home. Like there was nothing else to do but reflect and reflect and reflect. And you're writing everything down that you could think of and all the memories. And so what is the main lesson? Like exactly. Like you're 67, almost 68 now.
Yeah, I'll be 68 in June.
June what? June what?
June 11.
Okay. What's your social security?
Hey.
Okay, I almost got her.
That is confidential.
Confidential. So you're at 68 almost, and you're living in a pandemic, and just like the rest of the world, we lived in a pandemic. But for you didn't have work anymore, so you were kind of to your own. We were all living at home. We were all reflecting at our own pace, I'd say. So what is a lesson or like what is a good takeaway that you have for people that, again, because you didn't have any work to look forward to anymore. So like what was next was the big question that you were asking yourself every day. And I could feel it. You're like, what's next?
Yeah.
And like the biggest concern for us for the pandemic was, is the movie we're going to watch today at least decent? Right? And then to guarantee that it was decent, we just picked all the franchises that we liked and we just watched that. We watched like Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, Batman, all the pop culture stuff we're into. But that was the most biggest concern for us as a family here during the pandemic. No job, nothing. So what is like one thing that you learned? Because again, you're done with your working life now because you're retired.
Yeah.
So like what is next? And like what is the lesson that you have now? Because your initial lesson was you have to figure out what makes you happy. And you've already solidified that. And you've worked your best at your best with all your heart. And now you are not the conclusion, but you're in a new chapter in your life now. The conclusion of your working life, but now you are in your life where you have full autonomy and independence, of course, restricted financially, but what is next? Like how do you navigate now with your life? Because it's a blank canvas. It's a new canvas. You threw out the old one. Now it's a blank one. Now what is up for Mrs. Requerme?
Well, first of all, I am grateful that it was a timely retirement, and then the pandemic happened. So I was cloistered in the home where I feel safer, although I miss the children
Because you were a second grade teacher. Just to clarify, when you go back to teaching, because you went to Florida. Sorry, I skipped all that.
Okay.
So you went to Florida for a couple of years and then came back to California. And then you became a teacher at Compton.
Right. First, I was a teacher in Compton for 12 years. And then when we moved to Victorville, I was able to apply as a teacher of Victor Elementary.
Oh my God, you just revealed our
And I had
location.
13 years. So a total
Yeah.
of 25 years as a teacher in America.
Right.
And I had 3 years of teaching in the Philippines.
Right. And this wasn't normal. These weren't normal grades. You taught like second and third grade and first grade. So these are like,
Yeah, different
The
grades.
crazy
Yeah,
kids.
According to where I was where the
Yeah.
teachers were needed.
so I'm just
So I-
clarifying what the kids meant. We're like,
oh,
go
I'm
back
sorry.
to. No, you're good.
The kids, I mean.
Because I'm like,
the
you only have one
students.
kid,
I
if
call
I remember.
them my kids, my students.
Yeah, your students, yeah.
They are the ones I miss. Not really the work, but
Or the
children,
colleagues, yeah.
because they teach me a lot too in life. And I was so happy that I was back home, not working during the pandemic. And then my son came home because 5 years he was in UCLA studying. And so we lost him for 5 years. We had just the two of us with my husband. So that's one thing that I was happy, my timely retirement, and also my son came home. So what I did is just to make things happy in the home so that we don't, regret being cloistered together for a year. So we just did a lot of things that made us happy, like movies, good food, games. We played chess because we love chess, building stuff with puzzles. So we just saw to it that every day there was something fun that we could do in the house, and we never got bored. We really enjoyed being together again after a while.
Yeah, even if it was a terrible movie. I remember I mentioned this in another episode that.
Which one?
No, like terrible movies. I mentioned the previous episode that it wasn't even about the movie at the end of the day for us. It was just that that sense of community with us three. That like if the movie was terrible and we all reacted the same way, it was funny.
I know.
It was like, wow, never watch it. Like I think Daddy like hated one movie enough that he like wrote a 1-star review. Like he took the time to write a review, and he never does that.
Knowing your dad.
Yeah, so it helped like fine tune what really mattered to us.
Yeah.
And it kind of reinforced the idea that family's always top,
Right.
no matter what. And people might say that we're crazy, that, it's like, why are you going to Victorville like 3 times for like this amount of, this month or something? It's like, oh, because like my family needs me. Like that's as simple as that. And I don't need to explain myself to you. And that really helped strengthen us, I'd say. And we had our times where we did fight a little bit because it was just hard acclimating back into the household after 5 years.
That's normal for families.
Yeah, but it was quick. It was very genuinely quick, and it was easy. We were here for a year and a
when
half.
you have a happy home, you like coming home to it. So
Correct. Yeah.
You have to be surrounded with happy things and happy memories.
Right. So now to kind of cap off this episode, I think the best, like you just said, is your environment. It's really important, right?
Yes.
I know this
People
is
you are with and your environment.
exactly, and this is analogous to what you were talking about. And I had so my apartment, my room is completely blank, like in the first couple months, and you were really angry at me because you're like, why is it blank?
Right.
Because I was just like, I'm lazy. I didn't want to put anything up. But again, apparently, so this anecdote is going to be relevant to what we were saying,
Okay.
is that your environment, right? It's about like, you're not going to be greeted with a white wall every day because like, it's kind of a reflection of the inside of you, right? Like your mind.
Right.
And if it's a blank wall, then like, you're going to feel stuck.
Yeah.
Like you're just not going to feel anything. And that's why if you walk into my room now, it's completely chaotic or
Beautiful.
chaotic. Oh God, very
it's
far from it.
beautiful.
Well, people have seen it.
Yeah, because your room is a reflection of your personality.
Right.
So when I walk in there and it's just a white wall, I know that's not you.
Right. And like, people I am not a white wall, absolutely not. And that's why the walls behind every episode is always colorful, and that's why this wall is not white. And again, just making a connection with what you just said is your environment. It's really
Yes.
important. Like, not just the people that you're surrounding yourself with, but you have to believe in yourself that you are a creative in some sort of way, and that, like, it doesn't have to just keep it to yourself in your brain. Like, you can write it somewhere, draw it somewhere, and like decorate your walls. I'd say that's a really important lesson that a lot of people have not talked about. Decorating your walls in your room and your workspace or your living space
With
is
the
really
favorite
important.
things. That's your favorite
And a lot of people, again, like going back to our talk about tradition, they feel like they need to have this sort of style, right? Like this sort of like IKEA looking living spaces, like minimal, like modern deco look. But like, no, but if your mind is as chaotic as me and you, because our mind, like we like colorful things and we like placing them certain ways, right? Like for me, like I can put like a Spider-Man poster and then I can put like, I don't know, like what's something that's weird that I put?
Black and white.
Yeah. I can put like a Spider-Man poster and then I can just put like a picture of myself or like a picture of our family and then like a Batman poster and then like
Or the Punisher.
Or the Punisher. Yeah, the Punisher. So yeah, like if you see my wall, it's completely inconsistent.
Yeah.
But to me, it makes sense, right? It flows, and that's all that matters, right? At the end of the day, is what makes sense to you, right? And what you value and how you understand yourself. So I think that really encapsulates it. How you understand yourself with traveling, what are your values, what you value, the second one we're talking about. And third, how you present yourself and how you color yourself. Because no one is just black or white, right? Like in terms of like their inner thoughts or their creativity.
Right.
We have a colorful palette, but the question is, are you willing to use it all? Right? Because if you put red and blue together, you get purple. And when we decorate our walls, I feel more at home now. So that was a good lesson I know a lot of people are like, make your bed this, or they clean your room. But it's like, decorate your room. That's a huge lesson that people need to take away. And like a lot of people, right, they hang their medals, they have like basketballs, they have like posters of like their favorite like models or like celebrities, and those are the best, like most creative people, because those are the most comfortable. Like if you talk to those people that have rooms like that, they are the most comfortable in their own skin. Like they really don't care what anyone thinks.
That's part of their personality.
Right. And you come back to a blank wall, then like you're kind of a standstill.
Like a blank life.
Yeah, so goes to show that's one of the big points of frustration for her, is that if I leave something undecorated or just blank, she doesn't like it at all.
Yeah, because that's not you.
Yeah.
Your life is colorful. It's not a white
Right.
wall.
So neither of us likes routine. Well, we do like routine a little bit. But yeah, decorating the walls is really good, I think. So what are the 3 action items that we can say for the audience here? Well, what are the things that we learned from here? So 1, understanding yourself, and you can use travel to do that, which is great. If you can travel and you have the money to, I would say prioritize travel, because you have those experiences, right? Just don't, don't spend all your money drinking and like all that stuff. Like dedicate some money that you can dispose of to travel, because it's really important to understanding not just yourself, right? You do understand a lot more about yourself, the way you react to cultures and things like that. But you understand the world around you.
The world
right?
around you.
And like
Correct.
It's still living and breathing. If you go to Italy, like you went your Europe trip, you can still see the things that we read about in our history books. Like Rome, like Venice.
It's still happening.
You can see Venice is flooding. Like those are real things that are happening. And like you're worried about is like the Keurig pods on sale at Costco? Really? That's what you're worried about while you can be going out traveling the world?
Yeah.
2, understanding your values and like prioritizing what you need to prioritize.
Your life, yeah.
Right. And you valuing family or prioritizing family as your first variable in life, there's nothing wrong with that. And if that means that you have to go against tradition, don't be scared of being an outlier. Yes, you can have a fear of being like different, but that's what's really going to make you stand out, because the ancestors that we always talk about are always the ones that were very unique, right? Like for you, there's many generations before you that they were I won't say conquistadors. They were equestrians, right? In circuses. So this is something we didn't talk about,
equestrians,
right? And this is the funny theory of like why most of you guys are short, is because they were equestrians that were really, really short. Like they were like small people.
Maybe.
Right? So that's a theory, and that's the beauty of it, because it's a very colorful story. That narrative really roots this family into like this humorous, like unnecessary like small person niche, I think, which is great, which maybe will be a new podcast. And the third one would be your environment. Enjoy life.
Don't rush things.
That was the main lesson from
and
this.
Don't let anybody push you to do something,
Correct.
You do what you feel like you're gonna be happy.
Right. So that was the big that was the third big lesson. I'd say the mini lesson, the bonus one, is your environment is reflective of who you are.
Correct.
The way you arrange it, like if you have a messy area, then your mind's going to be messy. That's typical. But if the way you decorate it too is equally, if not a little bit more important, right? Like you can decorate as much as you want, and who cares, right? Especially with journaling, when you feel so insecure about writing certain things, you're like, should I be writing this? Like in the case someone reads this, like, no, write it the way like only you would read it, right? Like, don't care what other people would say because like, no, this is a journal for yourself. This is not for anyone else.
Yes.
But luckily, this podcast is for everyone. Like, this is not just for me to talk about myself. Although I did talk for, I'm sorry. I do. We live in a family where we talk a lot. So I'm surprised that you were very.
We do.
Yeah. I'm surprised you were very silent for most of this because I was overshadowing you. I'm sorry. Maybe the next one. Maybe this will be part one of many. Depending on your comfortability level.
Oh, okay.
You don't look you don't look very enthused. Okay. Well, that's a good life lesson. Is there anything you wanted to say to wrap up? Sorry, I just tended to conclude it.
I think I did say it already. As I said, enjoy life, don't rush things and don't let anybody push you to do something you don't like to do. And be happy. Always be happy. Because when you're happy, success follows.
Wow. Working hard and being kind really takes you places. You okay? How do you feel about that? How about this? It's okay?
Yeah.
We're going to upload this?
I just hope that, I was able to touch a lot of teenagers and they can enjoy their life.
Correct. Yeah. And the reason why I asked you, the sole reason is because, so you still refer to me as a teenager, but I'm 24.
You're
But
not considered a teenager.
well, you call me a teenager all the time.
You're going to be 25
Oh my gosh.
next month.
Wow, that means I can watch rated R movies now, which is great. But the importance lesson of you calling me a teenager is like you kind of subliminally like reminding me that I'm still young. There's a lot of things to do still.
Yes.
And
you
that
need to enjoy life.
And
before
worrying
you
too much
settle
about
down.
today's thing, like for me, is like worrying about when Keurig pods are going to be on sale, which they currently are, which we just saw, is the littlest of my worries. I'd say the biggest
Yes.
worry now is just trying to maximize my time with our family because, like you said, you had me when you were 42. And all your siblings, most of our family, I'm the youngest one, usually, I think, in this generation.
You're the youngest one.
In both sides, I think. In both sides, I'm the youngest.
Yes.
Because of this staggered marriage that you had so late.
Right.
So for me, my main priority, and just to kind of reclarify, and I think you already know this, is spending time as much as I can with them and with you guys. And that's why I chose to be in LA for most of my life, even in college, is just to be
Yes.
close because of grandma and all that stuff. And I was there for all of that, and I had no
Thank you
regrets.
for thinking of us. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I paid you
is,
I paid her $5. I paid you $5 to say that. Yeah, she.
Oh, teenagers.
See, you did call me a teenager. Okay, I don't know how to properly end this, but any last goodbyes you want to say to anyone directly? You want to look directly in the camera?
I've said most of them.
You can say you love them.
Just make your life happy. Make something out of it in spite of this pandemic. It's not the end of the world. So just find things that make you happy and make you enjoy doing, because the pandemic can really get us down and it is so negative in our life. So just find something that you want to do that you really enjoy the most.
And what about the students that are kind of concluding their time in college? Do you have like a specific advice for them that are kind of graduating soon? Because it's almost graduation season, so I kind of want to, like high school and college, those are graduating
Those
soon.
are
Any
your
like specific?
audience, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
old, this podcast is played in retirement homes.
Yeah. As I said previously, just slow down. Don't rush life, because you could be easily affected by the American way of life, which is fast paced. So don't get affected by it. Just slow down and enjoy life and taste life, because there's a lot of things out there that will make you happy.
Wow, that was great. Not today, Satan. Not today. See that? See that? Not today, Satan? Okay.
Did they see it?
I don't know. Well, for those of you that are listening, she has a Not Today, Satan mug right in front of her. She's flaunting it now.
Just in case temptation comes closer. So not today, Satan. Leave me alone.
Shameless plug, yeah. Coffee Dose in Rodeo 39 in Stanton, California. Great place. Very good vibes. Really like it. Thank you.
Thank
Mom,
you for listening.
Thank you for.
I hope you picked up something that you can apply to your life.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think I felt good about this one. Yeah. Okay. Well, we better eat. We've been talking for quite a while.
I know. It's time for us to eat.
And also, I think the dog's awake, so we probably have to. Okay, everyone. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to listen. This was kind of a longer episode, which is good because we got a lot of things. We only touched the surface for most of your life. Like, we literally skip and fast forwarded through your return to LA after Florida. And maybe we can talk about it another time.
Well, at least the highlights were,
You're a very
shared.
Very aged person, like in the most complimentary way possible. So I think this requires us to split the episode when we're talking about your life story. Because there's so many intricacies that I feel like a lot of people can take different lessons from. So thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you too.
Oh, well, this is your house, so I'm technically here.
You're crazy.
Okay, perfect. Well, everyone have a blessed week. This is going to drop maybe tomorrow. I want to drop this tomorrow as soon as I can. So, yeah. Goodbye. Do you want to say goodbye?
Okay, bye everybody.
Goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed as much as I did sharing my life.
Inspiring. Truly inspiring. Okay, everyone. Well, have a good week or a good weekend, depending when I drop this. And we will catch you on the... Do you know what I say at the end? Flippity flop? It makes no sense. I just... Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.
Baby, baby, baby. Why you always smoke a J, relax and watch some anime? Come through the pad I'm trying to play. A Super Smash Bros, what you know? Wait, let me pick Luke Carbo. You don't even know what I'm saying. Up B, and down B, now be playing, praying. Anything with you, baby girl, it's a day.